Now we're going to look at the Land Development Code to see what LDR represents and what we can build in that area. So I'm going to go to the Osceola County Land Development Code, and it's actually going to refer me to the Muni Code. So I'm going to click here, read the Land Development Code. In here, I'm going to look at the Chapter 3 and the Chapter 4. You can also take a look at the processes of the procedures on how the development goes. Typical subdivisions, you start out with, if the land isn't zoned as what you want to build on, you'll have to go through a zoning amendment. So let's say it was agricultural, you have to go to change the zone from agricultural to LDR, or some type of residential development. After that, you'll have a concept plan. If it's a large scale development, you'll do a concept plan, or if it's even a larger scale development, a development of regional impact. Since we're a small scale, we'll start out with a PS, a preliminary subdivision plan. And then we'll move to an SDP. That's what Osceola County calls it, a site development plan. It used to be called an EIP, Engineering Improvement Plan. So each county, city has different terminology that they'll use. Once you get your site development plan completed and basically approved, the next step would be the final plat. You don't want to do a final plat until you're sure of how the layout of the site's going to be and the county is going, or the city is going to approve the site plan. All right, so we're going to look at Chapter 3. In Chapter 3, we want to look at our LDR zoning. So let's take a look at the zoning districts that we have established. So if you scroll down, and I'm going to zoning districts, there's the zoning districts table 3.1. Underneath residential districts, I looked this up earlier, that's why it's already highlighted. Yours won't be. We have LDR, low density residential. Previously it was called RS2 and 3. Now, with that, we also have I'm not sure why they would give us what the standards are, but let's take a look at that. So the previous setting, RS, and I doubt they've changed, but we'll see. RS2 and 3. So RS2 and 3 is the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet and 7,500 square feet. Lot width is 85 and 65, 2 stories, your front, your rear, and side yard setbacks. So these are bigger lots than your normal mixed-use developments might be, where the lot frontage might be 23 or 25 feet. All right, let's keep scrolling down. So land use correlation, so low density residential. There's other correlations, and I'm not going to get off onto those topics right now. So they've got your agricultural standards, and then this is where we're going to look at residential standards. Okay, so the districts, single family districts, these are the various districts within the single family. And this is the residential development standards that we want to actually look at. So I'm going to expand this, and I'm going to print this because I want you all to print this out. So I'm going to save as a PDF, and I'm going to put it in our project folder as LDR, Osceola County, Florida Land Development Code. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Now we have, in the LDR, we have 3 to 8 dwelling units per 1 acre. Okay, the minimum lot area, it says 1 not applicable. Building height, 3 stories is max. The front setback is 10, the rear is 5, the side is 5, and the side street is 5. And anything from your building, ancillary buildings, is a setback of 5. I'm sorry, I might have said side street setback is 5, but it's 10. Okay, let me close that. So these are the things that are important, are the setbacks it doesn't say that you have a minimum lot area. Let's see what that number 1 says. So number 1 says minimum lot area does not apply to attached single family product. Note, when we're talking about front facing, and this is also important, even though there is a front setback of 10 feet, you do have a minimum garage. For front facing garages, the garage door must be placed a minimum of 25 feet off the perimeter boundary, and for a lane access garage, 25 feet from the edge of pavement. Rear garages shall be required for the single family detached and no less than 45 feet. Now, here's the thing with houses, most of the time your front of your house is the same elevation view as your garage. So even though you can put a house 10 feet off the front, if you have a garage that's parallel to the front of the house, then you have to be 25 feet for that garage to be placed. So new residential development that abuts developed projects of 1/2 acre size shall provide a 50-foot setback. That means if you have a development around you, you may have to be 50 feet off each of the sides that has development around you. For zero lot line, we don't have a minimum 10 feet between buildings, but we don't have a zero lot line on this. This one does, okay? The HDR, high density residential, does. Other information, we'll skip this. We're not working on commercial. So basically what we have is our setbacks of what we now know we can develop. Okay, but here's the thing. So let's say we have for the LDR, 3 to 8 dwelling units per acre. So depending on how you lay it out, depends on the width, the front width, and the depth of your development. So at this point in time, I'm not going to state what you have to have as a front lot width, but just be aware as we move through the project in the next phase to help you all along. I'll give you possibly a product type as me being your client, a product type that says I have a house that is 50 feet wide. That means your minimum lot width would have to be 60 feet wide, because you would need 5 feet on each side. Or if you were on a side street, it would have to be 65, because you have a 10-foot offset. Now, let's go ahead and look at our roadway designs. So depending on how the streets are laid out, if you have a road, let me see if I can get a example. Let's go to transportation standards, access management. Okay, so if you go to transportation standards, you'll have how your roadway is supposed to be designed. That means the roadway lane width, the curb and gutter, whether it be Miami curb or F curb. If it's a local road, is it an avenue? So most of your project roads on the inside are going to be typically local roads. We're not going to use any alleys in here. So local streets. So, whoops, sorry. So we have, scroll back to the top. Sorry about that. Local streets, we're not going to do one-way streets. We're going to do two-way local streets. Now, two-way local streets can have medians in them. So you'll have a drive lane, and then you'll have a park, they call it a parkway, which is just basically 7 feet of grass, and then they have a sidewalk, okay, or whatever the county says. So on local streets, and that's all we're going to worry about now, on local streets, if it is a street without a median, you have 5-foot sidewalk, 7-foot parkway, which is a grass area, 2-foot curb and gutter. If there's no on-street parking, NA, travel lanes is 10 to 11 feet. We're going to use 11 feet, and the total right-of-way width is going to be 50 feet. Okay, so that's no on-street parking. Now, if you have, we're not going to do any medians. So it's either going to be local streets without a median or local streets with parking. So on this, you have 5-foot sidewalks, a 7-foot grass area for your utilities. That's typically where your storm or your water and reuse go. Your sanitary, in some storm, your sanitary goes typically in the center or near the center of your road. There's a 2-foot curb and gutter. Now, the parking has to be 6.5 feet. So you'd have 6.5 feet, and curb and gutter usually is a foot and a half is allotted to the 6.5, which gives you an 8-foot parking space, 8 foot wide. So the travel lane, again, we're going to use as 11. So again, no median, and the total right-of-way width would be 63 feet. Okay. Now, additional information on parking. So on-street parking is required where the road runs through. When you have a project, you have a number of parking places that you're required. So for every unit, you have 4.5 required parking spaces. That means for every lot you have, or every 2 lots you have to have an additional parking space. So typically parking inside of a development has 4 spaces for every unit. So 2 in the garage, 2 in the driveway, and then you have to make up a space for every 2 units, which is now a big deal. So you have to add parking in where there's open space. Okay, so let's say you have 100 houses. That means you need 450 parking spaces. 400 of those parking spaces are attributed to the 100 houses. So that means inside your development, you have to make up an additional 50 spaces. And I'll show you when we get to laying out a project. All right. Now, you also have different variations if you have since our project is a small area, we won't have an avenue, we won't have a boulevard, so we're not making anything 2 lanes. We're not going to put we aren't going to put any bike lanes in, so our project won't be required for that. But be aware of there's also different standards for our roadways. Okay, so on this, I'm going to highlight this, not that one. For local streets, I want you to expand this and I want you to print it out. We are going to be doing without median. I'm going to print that. Right click. Okay, save as a PDF and save. And I'm going to say local road design. All right. And I'm going to open that up. All right, so what we're designing by, I'm going to highlight it. We're going to design by this one, and we are going to design with this one because I know we're going to have parking. The other thing is we're going to use 11-foot lanes, okay? All right, if you find in a project that you need the extra foot, oddly enough, you can go down to 10-foot lanes. All right. Now, I'm going to save that out. Make sure you have it and save. All right. Other information that we'll need for the design standards. So basically, we know what our roadways need to be. We know that we have our setbacks established. I want you to take a look at the other information that we have for the land development code. Now in here, we have examples of how on-street parking is going to be arranged. We're only going to be using parallel parking unless we create parking lots. Let's take a look at our stormwater. in the stormwater, we have specific design standards, and I'm going to go over these more so when we get to the storm portion of the course. But just be aware, we're going to be coming back to the Land Development Code for our design of our roadways and our storm structures. It'll tell us what event we have to design to. It will tell us the easements that we have to provide, our pond analysis, whether it's a dry pond or a wet pond, erosion protection, erosion control. So we'll get to that when we get to the stormwater portion. Also be aware when we're laying it out, we have to have open space requirements. Now the open space requirement for the LDR is going to be 20% of our site. 20% of our site has to be open space, okay? And we also have to have recreation accounted for that. So depending on how the recreation is accounted for example, for a site that has 50 units, you have to provide 1 acre of usable dwelling units, okay? So if we had 100 houses, we have to have 2 acres of recreation. That means some type of park. Now, could it be a 2-acre park? Sure. Or it could be a 1-acre park, but you also have the ability to put some type of recreational facility on it, which gives you a credit of a certain amount of square feet per building. So in this one, it says you get 1 acre for every 5,000 square feet of recreational building. So that means typically, so if a developer wants to develop more land, then he's going to have to provide, because you have to have, 1 acre for every 50 dwelling units. Let's say he had thousands of houses, then he would have to come up with a different way to provide recreation. And that's by creating, pools and amenity centers, tennis courts, things like that. All right. I'll get into that a little bit more later, but just be aware that it is a requirement. So as we're laying out our practice design project, I'll pull these elements in and explain them a little bit more. All right, so for right now, that's all I'm going to go over in this video. Just be aware of what other information is required per the Land Development Code.